I think we're learning right now that we've taken a lot for granted, and one of the most important yet underfunded is independent, fact-based media. Hi, I'm Haley, digital associate here at Progress Texas, and I need to tell you something important. We're down to just 3 months of funding. That's it. And if you've turned to us for facts, progressive perspective, or maybe just some clarity in the chaos, we're asking you for your help. In a state like ours, silencing progressive voices is exactly what extremists want. But here's the power we do have. If just 1 in 10 of you gives $10 a month, we'll be funded through the next year, just in time to cover the critical 2026 midterm elections. You can keep independent media alive in Texas by supporting our summer vacation membership drive right now at progresstexas.org. Thanks for listening.
My name is Macy Burns, and I am the Vice Chair of the Collin County Democratic Party, and I'm also the SDC member for CD3. I love to start my day with Progress Texas because it's how I know what's going on with everything else that's going on.
It's Tuesday, July 29, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch. Rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Another massive turnout of just plain Texans who are realizing that our state government is being used as a blunt force weapon against American democracy by Donald Trump. In his command, the Texas Republican lawmakers carve out 5 more red seats in the U.S. House for him in time to save his ass in 2026. Miranda Suarez at KERA in Dallas says UT Arlington was the scene of yet another outpouring of public outrage yesterday as hundreds of people packed into an auditorium for a hearing about the GOP congressional redistricting scheme. The overwhelming consensus being that redrawing the maps to give Republicans an advantage is a very bad idea. Several speakers continue highlighting the obvious hypocrisy in that many of these same Republican legislators voted for the current maps and have long defended those maps as race blind in an ongoing lawsuit from civil rights organizations alleging that as they are, the district boundaries already unfairly dilute and undermine the voting power of Texans of color. The 449-seat Rosebud Auditorium at UTA was full long before the event started at 5 yesterday. Overflow space was hastily set up, but still wasn't enough to accommodate the crowd, many of whom sweated it out outside, listening to the testimony on their phones. Congressman Mark Veazey of Fort Worth, whose 33rd district is among those targeted by the Trump DOJ, was there. He said that hard-won voting rights in Texas are under attack, but, quote, only now the weapon is not a billy club or a literacy test, but a partisan pen wielded by those who would rig the system to preserve power rather than earn it, unquote. Well said. While all this is going on, just as the hearings began last week in Austin, there are still no proposed maps presented. The argument remains about whether or not any of this should happen at all. And the call at this point on that for Texas Republican lawmakers is between their own constituents or Donald Trump. As we've talked about, among the limited tools to fight back for the Democratic opposition, and a perfectly legitimate tool, by the way, is a quorum break. Owen Dahlkamp at the Texas Tribune says those Dems have begun fundraising ahead of those daily $500 fines per AWOL member, and that strategies have been devised to circumvent rules against those fines being paid out of campaign funds. Dallas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett says she's willing to dip into her considerable war chest to help out. Austin Congressman Greg Casar has been working the Democratic donor crowd for backup as well. All of this happens while legal experts specializing in campaign finance and ethics doubt those fines would stand up in court anyway. There's also the slightly more remote possibility of similar action in the Texas Senate, where no such daily fine would apply. San Antonio State Senator Roland Gutierrez has done it before and says he's down to do it again, as he told us in yesterday's special session update. Find that conversation one click back on this podcast feed. It does look like something along this line is going to happen unless the Republicans shift their focus back to their state and away from their dear leader, for whom their fealty remains unshaken at a moment when everything from the economy to immigration to Epstein are dragging Trump's numbers ever further into the proverbial toilet. 37% job approval as of last week, lowest of the second term so far, approaching Trump's all-time first-term low of 34%. The president is now underwater even in 13 of the 31 states he somehow won last year. Independents in particular are sick of this crap And while it's probably hard for some of us to imagine, there has to be a point of toxicity and political liability that even the MAGA cultists in the Texas Republican delegation will no longer want to associate with or answer for. But that low is going to be super low. We continue to monitor the drop. Speaking of immigration, and Congressman Kassar, Katie Pratt at Fox 7 Austin, followed a fact-finding trip that the congressman took to a San Antonio immigration court yesterday to see for himself the experience of immigrants daring to show up for their hearings. He says what he saw was, quote, deeply disturbing, complete disrespect for and no due process for these immigrants showing up at court, unquote, with some lacking legal representation, a lack of translation leading to a lack of understanding about what was happening. And the congressman says he witnessed at least one immigrant being immediately detained by ICE when he walked out of his scheduled court hearing. More of the same in North Texas, where Aaron Torres and Alex Gwynn at the Dallas Morning News confirmed that a group of ICE detainees were recently held for days in a federal office in Dallas that is not intended for long-term stay, where they faced poor detention conditions, as family members and advocates have been claiming for days in Dallas, despite the denials of federal officials. Democratic U.S. Reps Mark Veazey, Jasmine Crockett, and Julie Johnson are formally demanding answers from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, including in a Monday joint letter reading in part, quote, the people detained at this facility, many of whom have fled violence or persecution, deserve to be treated with basic human dignity while their cases are processed under U.S. law, unquote. And more of the same in Houston, where KHOU-TV reports on a local man who's a U.S. citizen who says he was recently detained by ICE agents for nearly 2 hours, even after he showed them valid ID. Miguel Angel Ponce Jr., 33, says he told the officers, quote, bro, I was born in College Station. There's no way. What's going on? Unquote. Turns out he has the same name and resembles a man with a criminal history that ICE was looking for. Ponce says he finally got these agents to let him go by persuading them to compare his tattoos to those of the subject they were after, and upon releasing him, was advised by ICE agents to shave off his beard to avoid future confusion. This, friends, is bullshit. That can happen to anyone, especially if you're Hispanic. We hope Miguel is exploring a lawsuit. Austin listeners and soccer fans, take note. We're planning a live podcast taping event for Monday, September 15th with All-Star Austin goalkeeper Brad Stuver. We'll be talking about Brad's progressive activism along with his wife Ashley, both of their ventures into political advocacy, including their own Brad and Ashley Stuver Foundation, and the courage it takes for public figures to stand up for what's right these days, plus yummy beers, as we're doing this at Hop Squad Brewery in North Austin near the stadium. Sponsorship opportunities are available right now, and individual tickets will be on sale soon, all at ProgressTexas.org. Again, mark your calendar for Monday, September 15th for our podcast taping with Brad Stuver. Our mission at Progress Texas is to counter the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine at a moment when funding for public and independent media outlets and media figures who don't bow down to MAGA is under full attack. Progress Texas relies on listener support to keep going, but we've lately come within 3 months of running out of that essential funding. Thus, we're in the middle of our summer vacation membership drive. If just 10% of our audience signs up for a monthly donation of at least $10, we'd be good for the next year. And we'd like to avoid going on a permanent vacation. We could use your support now as a monthly contributor. Please join the fight against authoritarianism and for progress in Texas right now at ProgressTexas.org. We want to thank brand new monthly supporters Dennis Gilmore, Carla Schoonover Porter, and Patrick Yeagle. Thanks, guys, so very much. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Tuesday, July 29, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit, rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.